So we're being held hostage because of the environment. One of my friends once said we need 3 livers to detoxify all the environmental assault. So you got the EMFs that we're living with. You've got the toxic overload from the heavy metals. You got the glyphosates. You got the nano aluminum. So we're living in toxic soup, and you have to do a daily detox, something for your liver to get rid of all these toxic overloads. Make sure that your bile is clean and thinned out, because that's where all the toxic overloads get sent. So I think it's very important that we realize that these things are not just toxic, but they're cumulative. Yeah. And the 2 that are the most toxic of everything in that chapter, what would you think of in terms of heavy metals, Dr. Drew?
Well, I mean, you talked about lead, you talked about mercury. I think you also talked about aluminum as well.
Aluminum. And why aluminum? Because it can end up in the brain. So yes. We know that aluminum is a problem. You know, years ago, they used to say aluminum was very connected to dementia and all kinds of Alzheimer's. Then they said there wasn't any research. But in my book, I do some research with a Dr. Christopher Exley out of the UK, who's known as Mr. Aluminum. He published 150 papers and found conclusively that people that had severe Alzheimer's also had extraordinarily high skyrocketing levels of aluminum. So the question is, where is it coming from? It's coming from your antiperspirants. It's coming from your pots and pans. It's coming from some of your drugs, your medications, maybe some of the antacids, but you've got to really watch the aluminum. So no aluminum foil in the kitchen. My teacher used to say, I'd rather have a deadly serpent than aluminum foil.
You know, Drew's wife is a naturopath, and she uses parchment paper.
Yes.
For everything. We bake everything.
Glass. She puts the parchment paper on glass. So, you know, you have a clean pan to work with, and at the same time, you know, you're protecting yourself from, you know, heavy metals.
That's what we do. We put the parchment paper and then the aluminum, because aluminum foil is even more deleterious than aluminum, especially if you're cooking something acidic with a little wine, a little lemon juice, a little tomato juice. You got to be very, very careful about it. So aluminum has to go. Instead of aluminum, we use a stainless steel. We use maybe a little bit of glass, and also we use a clay that's lined with a glaze that is a glass glaze, so that there's no clay that comes forth into the food. So you got to be really very careful. The one that I think is most interesting in there is copper, because I make the connection between copper, based on the research of Dr. George Brewer, and Alzheimer's. So that to me is the real kicker. Getting rid of copper, curbing your copper, the divalent copper, the copper that's inorganic that can end up in your brain and really is a precursor to all the amyloid plaque that starts to aggregate in those people that have neuron death. So getting rid of the copper, getting rid of the aluminum, getting rid of the mercury in your fillings, getting rid of the cadmium, which is so connected to cancer. You got to be a nutritional detective, and you got to get the book, because I'll teach you how to detoxify it, eliminate it, and neutralize it for life.